Hello everyone and welcome to the Ticker.com's news channel on YouTube. On this channel, we review stock markets and discuss financial news, market trends, and economic data from Wall Street to Global Street. So let's dive in. We begin our review of global economy with the key releases in the US, Europe, China, India, and Japan. U.S. markets continue to pull ahead following strong earnings, dovish monetary policy, and resilient economy. Benchmark indices extended weekly gains after December's U.S. consumer price inflation was revised slightly lower in a busy week of earnings. The U.S. trade deficit declined in 2023 after weak energy prices drove the decline in imports at a faster pace than the rise in exports. European markets struggled in the week, and investors lowered their rate cut expectations, but worries about the domestic retail sales and export growth overshadowed market sentiment. The Reserve Bank of India held its key lending rate and said the economy is likely to grow at a faster pace than 7% annual rate for the fourth year in a row. China's domestic passenger car sales plunged in January from a year ago after the ending of government subsidies for electric vehicles, but exports soared on a higher global demand for its electric vehicles. China's vehicle exports surpassed those of Japan's after the world's second-largest economy dominated global electrical vehicle sales and captured the demand in Russia. Let us review key events in global bond, currencies, and commodities markets last week. The yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury rebounded above 4.1% after the U.S. consumer price inflation was revised lower to a monthly increase of 0.2% from the previous estimate of 0.3% in December. Gold eased a fraction in the week to $2,025 an ounce as investors continue to review monetary policy prospects, economic data, and the latest downward U.S. inflation revision. WTI crude oil prices rose 6% to $76 a barrel after elevated tensions in the Middle East raised the prospect of supply disruptions. The natural gas price in Amsterdam fell 7% to €27 per megawatt hour amid ample storage levels and above normal temperatures across Europe. The euro hovered at $1.07 against the dollar after investors scaled back their expectations of an imminent rate cut by the European Central Bank following cautious comments about loosening monetary policy too soon from several policymakers. The yen traded above $149 after comments from the Bank of Japan countered bets on an aggressive shift in monetary policy and rate hikes. We now review key developments in financial markets around the world last week. The S&P 500 index and the Nasdaq Composite extended weekly gains for the fifth week in a row as investors cheered the downward revision on inflation and positive earnings. European markets extended weekly gains after investors looked beyond rate uncertainty and quarterly earnings generally surpassed market expectations. The Nikkei 225 jumped to a new 34-year high on strong corporate earnings, a weakening yen, and accommodating stance by the Bank of Japan. China's market indices trimmed weekly gains after the latest inflation updates raised deflation risks and government measures fell short of market expectations. India market indices advanced in volatile trading after the Reserve Bank of India held its key lending rates for the sixth time in a row and cited risks of rebound in inflation. Let us shift our attention to market movers of the last week and earnings updates from leading companies. PepsiCo reported mixed quarterly results and said food and beverage volumes declined in its North American unit. Volumes in its beverage unit declined 6%, Quaker Foods fell 8%, and Frito-Lay eased 2%. Walt Disney soared after media and entertainment company reported better than expected revenue, earnings, and full-year outlook. PayPal declined after payment service provider estimated weaker than estimated earnings in the first quarter and full year. ARM Holdings soared after the advanced chip designer exceeded its own quarterly revenue target and lifted its full-year revenue outlook. Alibaba Group decreased after the China-based e-commerce platform operator reported sharply lower quarterly earnings and weak sales growth. Chipotle Mexican Grill jumped after the fast food retailer Fast food restaurant operator reported sharply higher quarterly earnings following a surge in store traffic. Ford Motor Company increased after the vehicle maker reported better than expected earnings and announced an additional dividend to shareholders. The automaker also said it plans to limit its investment in its electric vehicle unit. Uber Technologies declined after the ride-sharing platform operator reported a double-digit rise in revenue and bookings in its latest quarter. Yum Brands declined after the operators of Pizza Hut, KFC, and Taco Bell reported weaker than expected same-store sales increases in their latest quarter. Palantir Technologies surged after the company reported a jump in its commercial customers and added that the demand for its AI-driven and large language-based platforms is unrelenting. DocuSign dropped after the company said its plans to reduce 6% of its staff as a part of its restructuring effort to streamline its operations and reduce costs. Earnings season is set to continue into the fourth week, with leading companies including Airbnb, Applied Materials, Cisco, Coca-Cola, and Deere are set to announce their results. Moreover, in the U.S., economists are looking to review the release of January consumer price inflation, retail trade, and industrial production data. In Europe, investors are looking ahead to the release of GDP estimates in the euro area and the UK, and employment, retail sales, and inflation data are also set to be announced in the UK. Across the Pacific, investors are hoping that China will announce more specific and targeted measures to stabilize financial markets. Japan is set to release its GDP data for the final quarter, and India is scheduled to release its international trade, inflation, and industrial production updates. You can review daily U.S. and global financial markets news, earnings releases, SEC filings, stock movers, and economic updates on ticker.com and 123jump.com. You can also get the latest financial books on Redera.com and keep up with financial industry events on eventsinamerica.com. That is all for today, and we will see you next week.